Thank you to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. for sponsoring this video. In Jujutsu Kaisen, there are a total of 3 extremely treasured techniques among the 3 big families. Those 3 treasured techniques are the 6 Eyes plus Limitless held by the Gojo clan, the 10 Shadows held by the Zenin clan, and finally, Blood Manipulation held by the Kamo clan. And in today's video, I would like to explain all of Blood Manipulation's users, everything we know about Blood Manipulation, as well as every single technique that has to do with Blood Manipulation. I'm Eternal Flame, and welcome to Blood Manipulation Explained. Now, while I mainly plan to talk about Blood Manipulation, I also plan to talk about Eso and Kechizu in this vid, mainly because they kind of just fit into Blood Manipulation, and another user basically emulates their technique as Blood Manipulation techniques themselves, so I think it's good to put them in this video, rather than just creating another, short for them, maybe, I don't know. But I do want to just include them in this Blood Manipulation Explained video. So now, let's get into everything we directly know about Blood Manipulation. Now, Blood Manipulation is very self-explanatory. Blood Manipulation completely centers around manipulating the blood within your own body, as well as manipulating your own blood outside of your body. From what we know, you can't really manipulate blood inside other people's bodies yet. However, there's nothing really that implies this is not possible, other than the fact we've just never seen anybody do it. However, we have seen several applications that all center around manipulating the blood within your own body, manipulating your own blood in blood packets, and utilizing it in combat. This technique can go back hundreds, and maybe even 1,000 years. It's been around just as long as the Gojo clan and the Zenin clan. Currently, there have been 5 Blood Manipulation users that we at least know about. However, considering how deep this history of the clan goes, and the fact that it's a treasure technique, it more than likely has massively more than 5 users of it. With those 5 users being Noritoshi Kamo, Brain Man, Eso, Kechizu, and Choso. Now, first I'm going to go with Brain Man because he's the easiest to explain. He had access to Blood Manipulation over 150 years ago. However, we don't really know anything about his Blood Manipulation applications and usages because we never have ever seen him use it even in the manga. However, we do know he is the reason that Choso, Eso, and Kechizu all have access to their own blood abilities. However, considering the fact that this man is called the most evil sorcerer in history, he probably has some menace-level energy type of curse techniques that he used with Blood Manipulation and those applications that we just really do not know about right now. So up next, we're going to go to Noritoshi Kamo. Noritoshi Kamo is a 3rd year at Kyoto High, as well as the next heir to the Kamo clan. As a result of that, he has access to Blood Manipulation and has created several of his own applications of Blood Manipulation for him to utilize. Though up first, I do want to establish this. His blood is poisonous to cursed spirits. So when he fights against cursed spirits directly, and if his blood ends up hitting them and getting into their system, they end up getting weakened and they take more damage as a result of that. So now I'm going to get into his applications of Blood Manipulation that he uses. The first application that we directly see him use, and kind of the most well-known one he is known for using, is his blood-tipped arrows. Arrows that he is directly able to control the direction of because of the fact they are dipped in his own blood, and he can manipulate them as a result of that. The anime kinda really heavily amps this ability though, because if you saw what he did against Brain Man and how many arrows he just fired down and made it rain hell from the ground, you will know how much he can fire. It doesn't really do anything too special other than allow him to control the arrows directly and where they land. He also has access to a technique known as Slicing Exorcism, which his variant of Slicing Exorcism ends up making a giant blood shuriken that he is able to throw at an opponent in order to try and cut them. This was capable of damaging Hanami even, so this is a very impressive move, especially considering how much stronger Kamo ends up becoming later on in the manga. He also has access to a technique known as Crimson Binding, where he throws one of the blood packets that he carries with him in order to trap an opponent inside of it. It's directly used on Nue, and this is a really cool technique in my opinion, and would be super useful if he used it with other techniques in conjunction with it, but he doesn't really use it too often as he should have, but it's still a really good technique that is worth talking about nonetheless. Now, while it seems like the Blood Manipulation is a ranged focus technique, it actually does have other applications, which we're going to talk about now, known as Flowing Red Scale. Flowing Red Scale allows the user to increase the amount of red blood cells that is created, allowing them to get a massive increase in their speed and strength. Where when Kamo Noritoshi was using it, it allowed him to basically blur and vanish in Megami's direct perception when the two of them fought. We do get another usage of it later on, but I'm going to talk about that when we get to that character. However, this technique does have a massive risk of blood clot, especially when used by someone with a normal human body, because of the fact they have human limits, like actual limits amount of blood. which is what Kamo Noritoshi has, because Kamo Noritoshi is still ultimately human. After that is a technique known as convergence, which convergence is a basis of a lot of techniques, which convergence is just compressing blood down to a small amount in order to pressurize it and add more pressure to the blood. And then finally, we have the next technique that we see Kamo Noritoshi pull off, which is piercing blood. Where piercing blood in the way that functions is by creating a beam of blood that you directly fire off at an opponent at high speeds, the beam of blood being an arrow itself. This is also the technique he directly used to damage Hanami, and it's quite an incredibly impressive technique. However, that is all the applications we currently seen of Kamo Noritoshi using blood manipulation. Now before we continue on with the rest of this video, I want to take a break to talk about our sponsor to the page, Sakura and Tokyo Treat. Now, if you've been on the channel for a while, you'll have likely seen several of my videos talking about them and how they are the sponsor for our channel. We should talk a little bit more about them. Their goal is to be able to share the treats and customs of Tokyo and Japan itself with the world itself through Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co., using these boxes to introduce several parts of the world to the culture of snacking and just giving more information about the culture of Japan itself. And both of their boxes this year completely revolve around the fact that it's a new year to be your new self, so why not explore this new year with these boxes themselves of snacks that will deliver several amazing snacks that I highly recommend. As first, we're going to start out with the Tokyo Treat box, which this box is inspired by Japan's Oshigatsu, otherwise known as the New Year's holiday, with several inspired treats from that, such as the Lucky Red and White Kit Kat, the Agi Mochi, as well as the deep fried mochi snacks, and many more snacks that I can't even continue to describe. So I want to specifically take this time to talk about the Agi Mochi, because that was something I was actually really intrigued about at first. However, it was incredibly difficult for me to find it, mainly because of the fact that everything in this box is originally put in Japanese. However, through this guidebook, I was actually able to find the snack, a guidebook that translates all of the snacks into English to explain what there are, what their ingredients are, as well as give a little bit of information about the snacks themselves and how they were created. And after finding it, I realized that I really liked the flavor of it. Because to describe the flavor, it basically was like if you were to combine a slight soy sauce flavor as well as mochi just together, and it complements each other so incredibly well. So, rather than just showing it and describing it, I am going to straight up taste one and give you my live reaction to tasting one. So, let's do that. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Like, retrying it, it's just so amazing that the flavors and all of it just contextualize each other so well, and they clash so well with each other, and just such an amazing thing. And it's like, I have no idea how to even describe it. It's really good. And that was only one of the many amazing snacks that were inside of the Tokyo Treat box. And now let's get into the Sakura Co box. The Sakura Co box is partnering with the Hiroshima government to bring you a unique box of delicacies and cultural treats in order to allow people to immerse themselves in the nature and historic landmarks of Hiroshima and get a much perfect and better feel for Hiroshima. And since we seem to be in a bit more of a mochi mood today, I'm going to go with the lemon mochi in specific for the snack I want to show off to everybody. And the lemon mochi also works really well because the sour flavor works really well alongside the mochi. It is just something I would really recommend. But on top of Sakura Co offering a large amount of snacks, they also offer an accessory alongside the snacks. Sometimes they're plates, sometimes there's chopsticks, etc. But this time they're offering a wrapping cloth in specific, which the wrapping cloth looks really incredible, as you all can see, as well as they're offering their own types of tea as well. It's just all really amazing, and I would really recommend getting the box. However, that's just my recommendation and my thoughts on Sakura Co and Tokyo Treat. Remember to use my code in order to get a discount, and thank you to Sakura Co and Tokyo Treat for sponsoring the video. Link in the pinned comment and description below. We're going to talk about Kechizu, who is Death Painting number 3. A direct experiment of Brain Man, as well as a failed experiment that later on got incarnated later on by Mahito directly, which by the way does mean that they are able to hurt Mahito because of the fact they are a vessel. So yeah, have fun with that knowledge. They have access to the rot technique, which the rot technique is not technically blood manipulation, but considering it's basically off-brand blood manipulation because it completely centers around the blood, I'm considering it as part of this video, and this is my video, I can do what I want. That, and I'm pretty sure most people just consider him also a blood manipulation user, if I'm going to be completely honest. Let's actually get back into explaining this technique. Kechizu has access to the rot technique, which is a technique that uses his corrosive blood that he has access to in order to poison opponents by spewing amounts of blood at people that are burning their flesh on impact. It is a really good technique. It's a shame that it's placed on Kechizu, who's someone who kinda dies really early, but it's surprisingly a really good technique if only got a stronger user of it. Especially with the application of which is known as decay, where decay infects the target with a floral pattern that decomposes the body. It's basically something that allows him to poison opponents upon the blood making contact with him. This is something capable of taking out quite a lot of people. Unfortunately, he just got the two worst possible matchups for him in Nobara and Yuji, who Yuji is completely immune to poisons, while Nobara is able to effectively make her own pain reflect back onto another person, making those two just the worst possible matchup for him. However, that's kinda all we really see of Kechizu. I really wish we could see more of how Kechizu would develop and how he could advance his abilities, but that's kinda all we see of him. So now I'm gonna move on to his brother Eso, who is Death Painting number 2. Eso is also incarnated into the modern day from being a death painting, which also means Eso is capable of hurting Mahito. Eso has access to the same rot technique that his brother has access to, which allows his blood to be corrosive and poison that can decompose targets. It's a very potent blood that's just kind of better than average, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, but it allows him to also do other things like reshape the blood and actually use it in combat for himself. He also has access to the decay application, but I'm not going to talk about it for too long because I already talked about the decay application. So now we're going to move on to the main technique he is mainly known for, Maximum Wing King. Maximum Wing King is one of the 3 maximum techniques we have currently seen up to this point, but we haven't really seen any others in the current series. Maximum Wing King is basically around shaping the blood from his own body into being that of wings similar to that of a wasp. He has shown the capability to use these to launch himself high into the air, as well as give himself ranged projectile attacks that he can launch at people, and they are still incredibly fast. It's just Yuji is kind of a physical monster and beast to be able to outrun them. It's such a shame that we couldn't see Eso or Kechizu continue to grow, because I feel like they both just had such great potential, especially considering Eso was showing off a maximum technique. And now we're finally going to move on to Choso, who Choso is by far and away the current best user of blood manipulation that we have actually seen in the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, having shown off the blood manipulation technique to incredible extents up to this point, which I think anyone who watched the battles in both the anime for Choso versus Yuji or Choso fighting against both Brain Man and Urame, you will know that really well. So let's get talking to it. One of the abilities that Choso has direct access to is something called Blood Connection, which allows him to do a lot of interesting things when it comes to his brothers in specific. It allows him to sense where his brothers are, it allows him to sense the current status of his brothers, but most of all, it allows him to sense if his brothers are about to die or not. It's how he was able to tell Yuji was actually his brother all along, because Blood Connection activated at the same time when Yuji was right about to die in Choso's view, so that's how Yuji and Choso found out that the two of them are half-siblings. Up next there is Blood Poisoning, where when his blood gets into sorcerers' bodies, because his blood is specifically poisoned against sorcerers, unlike Kamo Norotoshi's who's poisoned against curse, he's able to poison sorcerers, resulting in things like their stamina directly training as well as them having to cough, as shown with Urame and Urame's Icefall immediately shattering once they got poisoned. He also has access to the ability to create blood by converting his own cursed energy to pools and waves of blood, which is why he was able to fire and utilize so much against Yuji Itadori. Up first, there is his variant of Slicing Exorcism, where unlike Kamo Norotoshi's variant of Slicing Exorcism, his variant of Slicing Exorcism creates very thin lines of blood that are able to cut away at whatever is in front of him. And this is, in my opinion, a much more efficient and just straight up better way than the way Kamo uses it, because it's much harder to avoid several thin lines and streams of blood that are cutting at everything than to avoid a whole shuriken being thrown at you. Then there is Convergence, which I already talked about, which is basically compressing and condensing blood to the absolute limit that it possibly can be with cursed energy. However, because of how Choso's blood in specific functions, it is weak against water and will immediately cause the blood to unconverge. Then there is Choso's variant of Piercing Blood, where Choso's Piercing Blood, when used against Yuji in Shibuya, was able to initially move at the speed of sound, which is incredibly fast, and it made it so there was a 50-50 chance whether Yuji could dodge it or not. so Yuji had to really focus in order to dodge it. However, after it's fired, Choso can change the direction of his arms in order to make the beam continue firing and fire at people, as well as ricochet it off of the walls. However, after the initial fire, it becomes much slower and much easier to dodge as a result of that. Furthermore, when Choso used Piercing Blood against Big Brain Man as well as Urame, he was able to destroy parts of the ground super easily and literally make an entire massive battlefield type of stadium pillar for him and Brain Man to do a giant hand-to-hand clash in. It was actually really cool in the anime. Then he has access to Supernova, one of his own custom techniques, which is a technique he developed himself, where it detonates several orbs of blood that are condensed using convergence in order to basically make a shotgun type of buckshot in order to hit an opponent. While it's not that strong on its own, it is still very good for a support type technique as well as a technique to catch people off guard and bombard them with attacks, purely because of the fact that Choso is able to fire more than one of them, and he is able to compress blood in the air without even needing to use his hands, which is absolutely insane, considering normal blood manipulation users have shown the stance that they need to clap the blood together in their hands for it to compress properly. Up next there is Blood Edge, which Blood Edge is done via shaping the blood outside of his body into that of a dagger to attempt to stab at people. Choso has also shown, at least in the anime, the ability to create blood-type daggers and spikes and throw them at people, while also showing the ability to use this and stab it into Yuji's foot. Furthermore, he also has access to Flowing Red Scale, which I've already explained how Flowing Red Scale works, so I'm not going to explain it again. However, more importantly, he has access to Flowing Red Scale Stack, where Flowing Red Scale Stack, he is able to make 3 arrowheads rise on his face, as well as several types of markings to rise on his body, as Flowing Red Scale Stack greatly amplifies his body even more than just Flowing Red Scale does, down to the point where it was allowing him to go hand-to-hand, bar for bar with Yuji Itadori in Shibuya when Yuji was actively converting his negative emotions, his fear, and his pain all into cursed energy in order to amplify himself even further. To put this strength in comparison, Choso, before he activated Flowing Red Scale, took critical damage just from 3 of Yuji's hand-to-hand blows alone, and now he is on this insane level. Up next there is Blood Meteorite, which is the final blood manipulation application that we directly see Choso use, where it's a technique that hardens the user's blood, and he's used it a total of 2 times against Yuji Itadori, where the first time he used it was to make a small super condensed and hardened orb of blood in order to throw it at Yuji and do quite a bit of damage to him, and the second time he used it was to make his body incredibly durable to tank a full curse energy blow from Yuji. Up to this point, this was one of the strongest shields we had currently seen in the series, even more durable than Hanami's body more than likely, and it's absolutely nuts. However, this does not come without a massive risk, and it's why it's not used that often, which is it has a risk of thrombosis. And that's all the applications we at least see in the anime. However, there are a few more I need to talk about from Choso in the manga, so if you don't want to be spoiled on that, that's the end of the video for you. I hope you've had a good day. See you later. But let's get into the manga applications now. In the manga, when Choso battled directly against Naoya Zenin, he was able to use Flowing Red Scale Stack and focus it specifically to his eyes, very much showing that you are able to focus the technique and amplify certain parts of your body. With that, he was able to perceive and be able to react to Naoya's attacks, who was previously perception blitzing both Yuji and Choso together. Finally, oh wait, I can use his name now properly. Yes, okay, now that the anime onlys are gone. If you're still here and you're an anime only, you're about to get spoiled, shame on you. When he directly battles against Kenjaku and remembers back to his brothers, he ends up getting a motivational amp, which allows him to show off a total of 2 new applications to his blood manipulation based on his brothers. One application is based on Wing King, where it's just a smaller version of Wing King that allows him to create several vectors of blood and launch them at Kenjaku in the process. And the second application of Bloodline allows him to launch his arm out at the opponent, completely based on Kechi's ability to spit out waves of blood and grab them, as well as throw them, which is based on Yuji's physical raw strength. But yeah, that's basically all the applications of blood manipulation that we have currently seen. As you can see, blood manipulation is an incredibly explored technique. Now, there are obviously more things that can be explored, which I actually make an entire video focused around. However, that's about everything I have to talk about in this video. I hope you all have a good day. I'm gonna see you all later, and peace out.